The man arrested last week in Fanie Park for the killing of Fanie Du Preez, 43 years old, and her teenage children Carlia and Philip has been identified. According to News 24 reporter Wim Pretorius, murder-accused Fanie Du Preez showed no emotion as he appeared in court today. Tia's sister Rina had this to say.
I don't think anyone can describe what we're going through. I don't think anyone knows. We were there on Friday after the police said we could go in. I wanted to go and see what it looked like there before they cleaned up.
Also present in the courtroom was Tia's other sister Rihanna. She had this to say.
Just try and imagine how he can do it to his family. We have been his family for 20 years. I cannot fathom it, honest truth. You can't look at the man and think he's a murderer, someone we had known for so long. We spent time together, had good times together.
This is my first time seeing him after what he did. When I looked at him, I couldn't bear looking at him again when he turned around. It was just, my heart couldn't take it. It was too bad for me.
Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, and thank you very much for joining me here again today. Last week we spoke about the case of Ruan van Heerden and how someone so spoiled took it all away from the family that gave him everything. So if you haven't seen that case, I'll link it up here for you. But today we're going to talk about the case of Fanie Du Preez. And this case was recommended to me, so thank you very much. And honestly, all of your suggestions are so amazing. And I cannot read every single news article out there. So when you guys read something and you recommend it to me, it really is nice to see what you guys are interested in and also what you've read that I haven't read and that we can now share information basically. But while reading today's case, it gave me so many mixed emotions because at one point I was thinking, oh, did he really do it? Is he really guilty? Is he telling the truth? But then I went full rage in listening to why he did what he did. So it's an absolute roller coaster of a case, and I urge you to buckle up for this one. But with that being said, let's get into today's case.
Intended for mature audiences only.
Today we are heading to the area of Fanie Park, which is an industrial city just south of Johannesburg in South Africa. And on the 3rd of December 2015, multiple gunshots rang out at the home of Fanie Du Preez and his family. And this day at the Du Preez family home would change the lives of the Du Preez family and those close to them forever. But before we run straight into this case, let's talk a little bit about the Du Preez family. Fanie Du Preez had been together with his wife Tia for over 20 years. Together, Fanie and Tia had 2 children together, their daughter Carlia, who was 17, and their son Philip, who was 14. Now this case is really bizarre because we still don't know why this person did what they did, and we sadly will never know the full reason as to why what happened. And also this case is very fishy. So let's talk about what happened. And on the 3rd of December 2015, like we mentioned earlier, multiple gunshots rang out in the Du Preez home. A man named Fanie Du Preez was at home with his wife and children, and all seemed fine. But as we know, we don't know anything about what happens behind closed doors and people's personal matters. Early hours of the morning, 3 bodies were discovered and Fanie Du Preez was taken into custody for suspicion of murder of his wife and 2 children. The murder of Tia, Carlia, and Philip was absolutely devastating to the community and those who knew them. So many people came in to support and show their love to the family on what to them was unthinkable and nonsensical. Nearly a week after the murders had taken place, and while Fanie Du Preez was in prison, around 600 people attended the funerals of the 3 murder victims, Tia, Carlia, and Philip. And the funeral was held at the River of Life Family Church in Fanie Park, where family and friends said their last goodbyes. Now I want to play you this video clip of the grandfather of Carlia and Philip, and this video clip was taken while he was talking to reporters after the murders and during the investigation, and listening to him is heartbreaking, and it just brings home that yes, we talk about these videos and yes, we report on the videos, but there are real people, real victims behind these cases, and listening to him cry and be so vulnerable talking to the reporter is very, very devastating.
It's heartbroken because when you see your grandkids and your daughter-in-law who's been shot, laying on a bed and on the floors, and there's nobody going to help you, and you're running around, you're looking for a police, somebody to come out and help you, and That's how it's broken. And the time when they take it away out of the house, you can't take it anymore. It's serious.
Also, when Tia's sister Rena went to talk to the press, she now said to them that she had lost most of her family now. She had lost her sister, her mother, her father, and her brother, who had all passed away in a couple of years of each other. And she said to the reporter, quote, "We now have a bigger family in heaven than we have on earth." Now, if we remember the words and the devastation in the grandfather's voice when he was talking to the press, and we move on now towards the trial of Fanie Du Preez, while the one side of the family was absolutely grieving at the loss and devastation of the children and Tia, Fanie's parents apparently seemed to be 100% supportive of their son, and they did not believe that he did it at all. And when we talk about the theories or different reasonings for Fanie doing what he did, apparently, just remember that his parents 100% supported him. So with that all in mind, let's talk about the injuries that were inflicted to the 3 victims. Apparently, Fanie shot his 17-year-old daughter, Carlia, 6 times. He fired 3 shots at his son, while his wife had 2 bullet wounds to the head. Fanie later confirmed to the arresting officer that his daughter, Carlia, tried to stop him and pleaded, "Near Papa, near," which means no daddy, no in English. And that's why she was shot through the hand as she was trying to defend herself from the bullets. Fanie Du Preez was absolutely 100% awake when he killed her. His wife, Tia, who was 43 at the time, had 2 gunshot wounds to the head, and his son Philip, 14, had 1. Apparently, 2 shots that were aimed at Philip were missed, but the third one that was aimed at Philip hit him straight in the head. But while Fanie was on trial, he said and pleaded with the judge that he needed to be released on bail because he said that he was mourning the loss of his family, and he said, quote, "No constructive mourning can be done while in prison." End quote. Fanie Du Preez also said that he is currently unemployed and that he needed to be released because he needed to go get a job. He needed to support himself. He couldn't just stay there. So Fanie Du Preez was apparently unemployed and he also needed to be released to mourn his family. But also what came out of trial was that Fanie and Tia had separate bank accounts. So Fanie believed that he needed to be released in order to settle his wife's estate. But even though Fanie was unemployed, he said that he could afford 40,000 Rand bail. Where he would get the money from, I'm not sure. Maybe friends and family or a loan, but he was unemployed. But ultimately, the state felt that this was not right and he was not granted bail. But it was also said that Fanie was retrenched by his employer a couple of months before the murders took place. And when he was retrenched, he was given around a sum of 27,000 Rand. And he did try and earn a living by doing odd jobs and doing things around the neighborhood, but ultimately he would find his earnings coming in by selling sex toys. But the selling of these toys would never be enough to support his wife and his 2 children. So later on, while Fanie was in his cell and he was busy waiting for the next trial date, a correctional officer did communicate with him quite often while he was in prison, and the corrections officer asked him, "Why did you do what you did?" And Fanie just said that he was threatened by drug lords. And when the corrections officer asked him, "Okay, but then why didn't you go to the police when you were threatened?" Fanie said that he didn't trust the police and he didn't want to go to them because he felt that they wouldn't help him anyway. But with this conversation with the officer inside the prison, this is kind of the catalyst where Fanie's different reasonings for doing what he did started. And by the tail end of the trial, the court heard 4 different versions of what happened and the reasoning for what happened that day. And according to Fanie Du Preez, this is what happened. So the 4th version, so we're starting from the back here, but the 4th version of what Fanie said happened that day was that a Nigerian drug lord came into the home demanding money from Fanie. He couldn't pay it, so then he forced Fanie to shoot his entire family. Now, working backwards, the 3rd version of what Fanie said was that he stated that the drug lords from Lebanon forced him to shoot and kill his family. Another version was that the Lebanese drug lords also came into the home trying to rob and trying to get money from Fanie, but then they shot and killed the family and they then pistol whipped Fanie over the head and he was knocked unconscious the entire time. But then the first version of what happened was that Fanie apparently did it, and this was the written confession version that he gave the arresting officer. But this just wasn't what the evidence presented in court. After the investigation of the murder scene was done, it was concluded that Tia was shot first, and remember she was shot twice. Philip was then shot second, 2 bullets missing him and 1 bullet straight to the head, and this was all being fired from his bedroom door. Carlia was shot last, and a total of 6 bullets were found in her room. A 9mm pistol and a .38 revolver was recovered by police in the roof hatch of the garage. The bullets that were found in the rooms and inside the bodies of the victims matched these weapons. There were also gloves found on the property which were covered in Fanie's DNA. According to the arresting officer, and this was the same officer that Fanie apparently confessed to, but this officer said that when Fanie was arrested, he was very calm, he wasn't reacting at all, and like we said earlier, during the entire trial, he would just make notes of what everyone was saying. But now things start to take an even darker turn. According to Fanie, he said that he was absolutely mistreated the whole time that he was being held in the cells. He said that he was never allowed to urinate in the toilet. He always had to do it in the mug that he would drink coffee out of or water. And he was constantly chained to the cell bars via his feet and via these big chains. And also, according to trial records, Fanie Du Preez had taken out a 1.1 million rand life insurance policy, and it seems like she took this out on herself a couple months before she was murdered. Maybe it was to ensure that if anything happened to her, her children would have some kind of income coming in. But the reasoning for this was not clear or presented in the trial. Along with the murder charges, Fanie Du Preez also faced charges of being in possession of illegal firearms, ammunition, and one charge for obstruction of justice. So we will not know why Fanie Du Preez did what he did, apparently, but the state told the court during the bail application that the couple had really bad marital problems and that Tia, who was 43 years old at the time, was planning to divorce her husband. Then, at the end of the trial, Fanie Du Preez was sentenced to over 90 years in prison, so he was never going to get out. But that's not where it ends. According to a recent news article, apparently Fanie Du Preez actually passed away in prison, so he never served much prison time at all, and the way in which Fanie Du Preez had passed away was never released and no one knows a thing. So very suspicious. So the question is, how did Fanie Du Preez pass away in prison? Was it someone with actual drug lord connections? Was it someone trying to sweep everything under the rug and kill everyone and all witnesses for the Du Preez family, and Fanie was the last one to pass? Were there actual drug lords and robbers in the home that day? Or was it just another case where Fanie Du Preez was absolutely guilty in all ways and just using different stories to try and lessen his sentence or to try and appear less guilty? So there are so many unanswered questions in this case, and sadly, with Fanie Du Preez passing away, these questions will likely go unanswered. So let me know what you think of this case down below. I hope that you have all had a great week. Please stay safe out there, and I'll see you again next week. Bye.